So the tension's there. So the Pharisees heard that Jesus was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. When the Lord learned of this, he left Judea and went once more to Galilee. Again, why this would have clout, maybe someone smarter than me would know, but my point of interest in this is how many times we beat the heck out of somebody on a point that who could care? You know what I'm saying? You guys play the electric guitar at what Bible study? Oh, unbelievable. And we spent 6 months debating on whether that's biblical. Right? I'm picking on something stupid because that's how stupid it is. I'm thinking, okay, in the scriptures, what difference would it make if Jesus was baptized in more than John? Like, is there some prophecy tucked away somewhere that says, oh, this is how you'll know, right? And so anyway, it's interesting. So they come up with some kind of weird thing, and they get in there. And so Jesus hears of this. He's like, let's get out of here. And when the Lord learned of this, he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now, I have a map right there. And if you notice, I put this here because I think God has a sense of humor. You have Judea here where he's getting all this tension. And then you have Galilee up here. This is where Jesus has got to go. And then you have this huge block, just stumbling block of these trash people right here. Right? This is the other side of the railroad tracks for everybody. Does that make sense? And it's funny, I think it's funny that God would allow this thing to happen because it shows, again, in this Pharisaical system that was going on and the tensions building, it's all of a sudden, you're one of those and you're not welcome. And so these people are completely shunned. And yet, as we see in the scriptures, Jacob's well's there, and you have all this history there, and God's doing and moving and shaking things in Samaria, and somehow we, the biblical connoisseurs, have somehow shut these people out, and they just don't matter to us anymore, And I think it's funny that everybody that was, the holier than thous that floated, they didn't walk anymore, right? They would walk around to get up here. Can you believe that? So many miles out of their way. They're thinking, well, I just want to go right here. And it's like, no, we're going to go around here. Because the trash here, we can't really get involved with, right? And so, anyway, I just love this map because it just shows how ridiculous we are as people.
You said that the Pharisee timesheets came up 100+ years earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did they come from the Levite branch?
Well, anything to do with the priesthood would have come from the Levitical system, obviously, because there would have been no other way for them to announce themselves into it, right? You can't just come up without it. So that's what was going on. So there was all kinds of issues with the altar, and the Assyrian guy, I can't remember his name. No one remembers this. The Syrian guy that I think put the pig on the altar kind of thing. Anyway, all right. This purple spot here is roughly a 40-mile block. So just for your geographical sense here. Now Jesus had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well, and it was about the 6th hour. Now, the hours are obviously important, so this is roughly noon. In this particular region, you're not out scouting water in the middle of the hot day, right? So normally you would get water in the morning, or I guess in the evening you could go as well, but normally, just got a text. Can you turn that off? Yes. Wouldn't that be awesome? He's like, this is what it would say. Shut up and sit down. You're hurting my feelings. All right. So Jesus had to go through Samaria, which was no accident, right? I think it's interesting he said he had to go through Samaria because really, did Jesus have to? Right? Somehow, Jesus has got bigger things on his mind, right? So he came to the town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. So now we have this woman come up. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" And it's interesting, you have this note here that says his disciples went out shopping, right? They're going out to get groceries because they're on the road. They're with Jesus. They've left all they had, and they're coming with him, and they're thinking, okay, let's go get some food while we're in this area. And I think it's funny that Jesus could have said, hey, maybe one of you boys stay with me. It's probably a rough town. I don't know. But, Jesus somehow eliminates himself from all this outside influence and says, this is too big for them. They don't understand it, right? There's no way they're going to understand me talking to this category of life. Boys, go shopping, right? You're never going to catch this deal here. So he asked this woman for a drink. Now, we know Samaritans have no dealings with the Jews. We know that this is a woman which would have had its own subcategories back in that day, and that's why Jesus was so phenomenal to women. But, he kind of revolutionized them. But the idea that she's a woman, she's a Samaritan woman, and he's in this Samaritan town that he should have dusted his feet off and just walked around, right? And so he asked her for a drink. He wants to share a spit with this lady, right? He says, will you give me a drink? And the disciples were gone. It says, the Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. So what is Jesus in his fleshly body? He's a Jew, right? I know some people don't think that, but anyway, it's in here. Okay, so Jesus, she sees this thing and she says, you're a Jew. Obviously, you shouldn't be asking me for a drink. And I love Jesus' response. Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. And then she's being more practical. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, and did also his sons and his flocks and his herds? What do you think Jesus' answer was? Yeah, I am actually. I'm bigger than Jacob. Huh? Yeah. So you have her being very practical, but you also see that there's an intriguement about Jesus and there's a relationship starting. Do you see that? He didn't come up in stiff armor. He didn't come up and try to give her the 4-point gospel. He came in and started this relationship with her in such a way that he broke the ice just by even being with her. Right? So he comes up, hanging with the wrong crowd, and says, listen, I want to be with you. What are you doing? Can you share with me something? And I can just imagine her wall crumbling to the ground, and then it's all like, okay, now this guy's crazy. He's a little unreasonable. He has nothing, and he's talking all these weird things. And so he begins to intrigue her to the point to where she wants more. And so anyway, she compares him, says, are you better than Jacob? Which also shows the historic lineage of this area, that somehow she feels as though this well was given to her lineage. Does that make sense? There's a common ground here of both parties could meet at this well technically, because Jacob is kind of the father of the Jews, and then you have somehow the Samaritans feel the same way, right? So there's a common ground of interest here, and they could meet at this common ground. So she felt, obviously that means she learned it from somebody, which obviously means someone was teaching this stuff, which obviously if you learn the history of Samaria, there were tons of Jews living in this area. It was kind of the rejected Jews. So if you're a rejected, dejected Jew, this is where you went. So certainly they would have been carrying the good news. In my opinion, it's probably the turf I would have went to, because I would have been so frustrated with the Pharisees that I would have just lived in Samaria as well. Because you have this yoke that they're trying to make everybody wear, and yet they don't themselves. It gets a little irritating. Anybody got any questions? Okay.
What's the lineage of the Samaritans? Like, where did they come from? Can they be traced back to one of the Jewish forefathers? Or?
Well, the only thing I know, I didn't read all that history, but what was going on is one of the Roman guys was trying to Hellenize the Jews, trying to get the whole Greek issue going on to where they were trying to basically change some of the strict Jewish issues. And so people were getting frustrated with that and going into Samaria, and obviously there was some interbreeding going on, which was totally uncalled for. And then you have a couple of guys saying, listen, we want a pure breed and nothing else, so you're trash and we're not. So I don't know exactly how it started, but that's kind of the history. So I don't know, obviously you could say they're from the same forefathers, but